You may feel like you've lived a very mundane, ordinary life. Well, that is not the story of my next author. His name is Larry Laverentz, and he's written the book, The Not So Ordinary People on the Roads I've Traveled. Cannot wait to hear about his stories and learn more about his book. Welcome, Larry. We're glad you're here.
Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to this.
And Larry, let's start with the overall message of your book before we start getting into the actual stories.
Well, it's a memoir that also recognizes uh, many people in my life that have either influenced me or have been interesting to me in my travels. I have almost 50 chapters, either singles or couples, that reflect this.
And how much traveling have you done in your life?
Well, I've set foot in about 35 different countries,
Wow.
but I spent most of my time in Vietnam and Southeast Asia.
Hmm.
But I've been in countries in Africa and Nicaragua and South America or Latin America and a lot of countries in Asia.
What inspired you to write the book? Were people around you going, Larry, you've got to write these stories that you're sharing with us? What was the inspiration?
Well, uh, I really started out writing chapters about my parents because I thought that would be interesting to my grandkids and other relatives. And I started writing, and I got to thinking about, well, that's pretty good. And I was encouraged by a good friend of mine in Arkansas that I should continue writing. I happened to think of a neighbor lady, Grandma Deverell was how I referred to her, and I wrote about her. And as kept writing, I kept thinking, well, there's other people that I could write about, so I did.
Hmm.
Uh, part of the motivation was the fact that I have of my four grandparents, I only knew one, and I regarded her as an old lady only.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So maybe you didn't get the stories that now you're able to pass down. And that's kind of a legacy that you can leave. Larry, the thing that I'm hearing is that I know that you were raised in a small town, but yet the world was so open to you. And you seem very in tune to the people around you. You're not talking so much about the things that you've seen. I keep hearing that relationships are important to you. Is that what a lot of your book is about?
Uh, well, relationships and the good of people.
Hmm.
Uh, Most of the people that I write about have three qualities in common. These are honesty, humility, and humor.
Hmm.
And there's a fourth one that I could add for most of them. That's humanitarian. So relationships are important to me.
Hmm. But the goodness of people is also the cream that's rising, right?
Well, that's true, but I there's a lot of good people in the world that never make the history books, obviously.
Hmm.
And I just think that you should not wait until someone passes away
Yeah.
before you write about them, before you acknowledge their contributions and the goodness of, of their character and etc.
Larry, can you share one of your favorite stories from the book that will get our appetite just a little wet?
Well, I went to a high school of 21 students my senior year,
Wow.
and I sang in a duet with Mary Berry. We sang "Whispering Hope," which is an old song, old hymn that most people haven't heard of now. But when I was in Vietnam, I was the deputy province chief in the province I worked in. My best Vietnamese friend. We went to uh, a district outpost to with young people and had a program and to sing for about 100 or so soldiers, Vietnamese soldiers, in the
Hmm.
compound. And at the end of toward the end of the session, I heard the MC talk about the American advisor singing. And I could not think of anything to sing. If I thought about it, I could have sung about an old fraternity song. But uh, I sang Whispering Hope.
Oh,
Soft as the voice of an angel. That's how it starts. And anyway,
I
so
love it.
I sang that in front of these soldiers, and they clapped. I thought it sounded like an ovation to me.
Oh, what a great story. And it sounds like the book is filled with just stories of experiences of people that you've met and opportunities that you've had, things that you've seen. What are among some of the favorite places that you've been?
Favorite places I've been in Vietnam or in other places?
Other places, the whole world.
Well, I liked Athens.
Mm,
Athens was interesting.
mm,
Um, I certainly, I guess, liked Barcelona,
mm.
Spain. Uh, Ghana, where my daughter worked, was interesting to me. Uh, in Athens, second time I went through Athens, I met a person by the name of Sam Najoma. He was on his way back from Yugoslavia, Belgrade, and I was going to Cairo. There was a dust storm in Cairo, so we were put up in the same hotel, and I was put in the same room with Sam Najoma. Sam Najoma became the first president of Namibia in Africa.
Wow.
And
Wow.
unfortunately, I did not stay in touch with him, but he
Mhm.
was a delight. We spent the evening together and had a good time. And he was a delightful, really charismatic individual.
Mm. You had a lot of these opportunities because of volunteer um, opportunities that you took advantage of. I don't know how else to say it, but can you talk about that?
Well, I went to Vietnam as an agricultural volunteer, and uh, then I worked for the U.S. Agency for International Development
Mm,
in the pacification program. So I had a chance to interact with lots of different people from different countries, and I found out that I really enjoyed people of other cultures. It taught
mhm.
me so much about life and myself, even, and the kinds of things that are important in life. Certainly helped me establish priorities, and I think gave me some empathy, increased my ability to empathize with individuals.
I would love for you to expound on that more. What was it that you saw in other people that gave you empathy? Because I think empathy is about the most important value that we can hold personally.
Well, you when you go to Vietnam or places, or you follow world news, you you recognize just how fortunate we are in this country, how blessed we are with the things we take for granted.
Mhm.
And uh, so I think that helped me understand that there's there's something like 100 million people in the world that are either displaced or refugees, and many of them, are quite frankly starving.
Mm,
And I just every time I get down, I think about those things as being important. As what are important,
right.
when
Absolutely. It sets our priorities and resets what reality is. It takes us out of our little bubble when you travel and you see those, you know. I was
correct.
just wondering, what was particularly important or poignant in your book that you hope, like a message that is shared with your reader?
Well, one of the chapters that I write about is a lady from Cambodia that I sat next to when I worked for the Office of Refugee Resettlement in Washington D.C. Uh, Chu was a victim of the killing fields. Her and her family of 10 or 12 people, only only her and her brother survived that. So it talks about the trauma of her family and how her family either starved or were outright killed by the Khmer Rouge. So that's one of the stories. Another story is about
Mhm.
Mike Binge. Mike Binge had a job similar to my own in Vietnam, and uh, Mike was captured by the North Vietnamese in the Tet Offensive and spent 5 years in prison, or in a cage, or in prison. And Mike survived that and is still alive, in fact. But I mean, those are two of the stories, I guess, in the book that are a little bit unusual.
Hmm. Larry, what would you say as we begin to wrap up this interview to someone who's watching or listening and says, I want to leave a legacy. I want my family to know some of the most important points in my life. What would you say to that person who's insecure about beginning that?
Well, I would say number one, uh, write about people that you know. In other words, start with other people, but also don't be afraid to write about yourself and about the things you've done, because it's a legacy, it's history. So it's very important that I think that a person, you know, talk about and write about their lives and the people they encounter, the good things that they like. Yeah, even mistakes. I
Mm,
talk about mistakes that I made in in my life that I wish I could correct
sure,
now.
sure, sure. Well, we do need to end this interview already. Thank you for some amazing insight. I want to give you the last word. Is there any final thought?
Well, I appreciate the opportunity,
Mm,
and I just think it's not a book for everybody, perhaps not a chapter for everyone, but there are chapters that will be interesting to people,
mm,
and it goes from being raised on a rural area in a small community of high school of 21 students
mm.
to Vietnam to post Vietnam. So it's something that I think most people will appreciate.
I really appreciate your time today. Thank you so much. We want to thank EC Publishing for making this interview possible. And your book is available where, Larry?
Well, it's the book is was published by your online publicist.
Hmm. And I imagine it's available on Amazon. Is that right?
There was an earlier edition available on Amazon.
Okay.
I'm not sure this one is, but
Okay.
this is actually the second printing, and it's as I said, your online publicist.
Okay. Very good. Well, the not so ordinary people on the roads I've traveled. Larry, thanks for joining us. Have a great day.
Thank you so much, Suzanne.